Hi, good morning, good evening, you all. Today, we will basically discuss about the Equifax data breach, which was a part of the cybersecurity program. Uh, so let us basically firstly identify the agenda of this project. First of all, let us identify what is Equifax background, what is the data breach that happened in the year 2017, how it happened, vulnerabilities identified. As a part of this course, cybersecurity course, we have studied different modules, and we also basically got a good understanding about the defensive and offensive practices in cybersecurity, and also got a good control and NIST framework as well. Throughout this basic presentation, we will be identifying the different frameworks, and if these frameworks are implemented, and this if a defensive and offensive strategies, if implemented, how could Equifax have prevented this data breach? And we'll also learn how Equifax would have efficiently handled it, and also we'll have a brief overview of the lessons learned. First, let us have a brief background of Equifax. So Equifax basically provides users, consumers, and business with a wide range of solutions from consumer credit monitoring, identity theft information, to business risk information, commercial identity, and fraud solutions. It is a huge organization with 3 billion in annual revenue, 9,000 employees working across different geographies, and it operates in 24 countries. Basically, this is a consumer credit reporting agency, not only for individual customers, but also to different businesses as well. Now, so this huge organization was basically in a hack, and that hack costed the and it is also, basically considered as the huge cybersecurity incidents among the recent past. So we will identify what happened and how could it has been prevented, and also I will also add up the lessons learned from my cybersecurity course and try to implement them in this breach. If implemented, how effectively we would have prevented them as well. Now let's understand about what happened. In the year 2017, around 147 million consumers personal and financial information from United States, Canada, and United Kingdom were exposed as a result of the Equifax breach. So, the what actually happened was the attackers were able to access Equifax servers by taking use of a flaw in the Apache Struts web application framework, as shown in the figure. The attackers were able to obtain sensitive information by using this vulnerability to execute a code on their servers. Approximately, the attackers were able to get the system access, okay, for about 76 days, during which they were able to extract large amounts of data. This data includes social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, credit card numbers, and other sensitive information. The attackers were able to basically extract this and put it on the dark web. The Equifax breach was a significant event that basically, underscored the importance of strong cybersecurity practices and the need for organizations to take place proactive steps to prevent their data and systems. In the wake of this breach, Equifax, faced significant public backlash and ultimately agreed to pay a settlement of 700 millions to affected consumers and regulators. For almost 76 days, the attackers were able to stay in control of this Equifax servers, Using that time, they were able to extract a huge amount of data, as said earlier, like the credit card numbers, social security numbers, birth dates, residences, and other private information as well. So, this was a landmark incident. It highlighted the value of sound cybersecurity procedures and the requirement for business to take preventive measures to safeguard their data and systems. And Equifax faced intense public criticism and attention as as they faced this huge breach which went on for 76 days. Now, what were the now we will basically I didn't understand what were the vulnerabilities identified and what were the issues basically the organization has to face and what were the governance and issues that the organizations was facing at this point in time. So one of the major root cause, as discussed earlier, was the Equifax breach was, you know, a failure to patch a known vulnerability in Apache structs. The attacker was able to execute arbitrary code on servers, and even though the patch was identified and disclosed in March of 2017, the Equifax failed to apply this patch, leaving the systems, vulnerable. And the specific systems that were, vulnerable to attack were the web application servers, which they used to manage and store sensitive data, including names, social security numbers, birth dates, address, and other credit card informations. The attackers were able to exploit this and gain access to Equifax network and extract large amounts of data. So the basic governance issue that Equifax is facing as the organizational governance issues to be precise was it has poor security practices, inadequate oversight, and they don't have. Accountability was also not there because the servers were not patched on a timely basis. Next, the Equifax had a complex and decentralized organization structure, I suppose, which made it them difficult to identify and mitigate security risks across the company. There was also a lack of accountability with no clear lines of responsibility for security and no specific individual or teams tasked with implementing and enforcing security policies. And also from the public outrage, the Equifax response to the breach was criticized uh, for being slow and ineffective as well. Now let's in the next step, and the Equifax major missteps were being slow and effective, and it also hid the damage caused by the breach as well. And this is a major misstep and a delay in disclosing the breach to the public as well. You know, so Equifax discovered it on July 29th, but did not disclose it until September 7th. Uh, Finally, people also felt that the response of the breach was seen as insufficient, with many people feeling the company didn't do enough to compensate victims or improve security practices. Now, in this slide, in the next, this slide where we I try to present the defensive and offensive strategies that I studied in the course, and if these were taken into consideration, Equifax might have prevented it. So, like any other organization, as said earlier, some of the offensive and defensive strategies are consistent penetration testing. Equifax should have hired a security company to perform regular penetration testing to find system flaws before hackers may take use of them. and proper employee training on a regular basis. Employees must be trained on security topics such as to spot the phishing emails, generate secure passwords, and how to handle sensitive data. Proper encryption practices must be followed to protect sensitive data, such as, since Equifax deals with a lot of consumer, rating, the data is really sensitive. They'll be having consumers and customers' social security numbers, birth dates, and credit card numbers. Now, Equifax must have used proper encryption. Uh, this would have made difficult for hackers to obtain the information if they might have used proper encryption, you know, standards. And some of the defensive strategies that they might have used at that point in time was multi-factor authentication to guard against unauthorized access into systems. So users are required to basically submit additional data such as security token or biometric information in case the additional multi-factor authentication is being practiced. And as well, they should have also implemented strong password policies, and they should have mandated them to their customers and staff members for implementing strong password policies. And finally, Equifax should have opted for the segmentation of networks to stop an attacker from accessing the entire system in the event that one section was compromised. And even one section was compromised, the network segmentation was not done properly. So Equifax must have taken proper attention on that. And consistent patching, which was the major flaw, lastly. So to address the vulnerabilities that they have identified, that a hacker could exploit, right, a vulnerability on Apax's web application servers, Equifax should have updated its software with the most recent security updates. So by implementing a combination of the defensive or offensive practices, the likelihood of the data breach, is less likely, and the damage also would not be there, even though the data has been breached, if they have followed proper encryption standards, or the data might not be available, the sensitive information might not be available on the dark web as well. So if any one of the practices discussed above is offensive and defensive, then even though the breach, even if there is a likelihood of breach, the data might have not have been exposed. Now, apart from implementing the defensive and offensive strategies, Equifax might have followed a proper framework, right? The standard framework most of the companies follow on to date is the NIST framework. So Equifax might have benefited from putting the following NIST controls. One is vulnerability management. The time of intrusion, a fix was available for the vulnerability already in March 2017. So if there were proper scans, vulnerability scans, and given priority to fixing these serious vulnerabilities, Equifax could have enhanced its management procedure for vulnerability and the secured assessments and authorizations. Equifax would have benefited from routine security assessments and authorizations to spot security flaws and address them before attackers can take use of them. Continuous monitoring. So, by warning security staff of any unusual behavior in the network, continuous monitoring could have aided Equifax by detecting and responding to assault more rapidly. So, they faced a lot of criticism. So, if there is proper continuous monitoring, security staff was, if they have taken serious steps to implement strong security practices, the breach was identified and it was loosely communicated to the public, all these flaws and delays might have not occurred. Okay. and access controls, proper access controls. Equifax could have strengthened its access control by introducing multi-factor authentication and limiting user access to only data and resources they are required to carry on their job duties. And they should have had proper incident response, because Equifax might have benefited from having it in the place that would have allowed them to promptly react and control the breach once it was discovered. Now, these are some of the suggested NIST controls if Equifax has put into practice. The first case, if they have a proper vulnerability management program, the vulnerability would have been identified and proper patching would have been done, and MFA, if proper multi-factor authentication is done. Okay, even though if they don't implement one of the above two, even if they have a proper incident response team, they have might you know proactively communicated the breach to general public and save, and I also could have safeguarded them. So the incident response team must follow some of the several steps. First, they would have ensured that the breach was disclosed to the public as soon as possible after it was discovered, to minimize the amount of time that the attackers had to exploit the stolen data. Secondly, they should have ensured that Equifax response website was properly designed and secured to prevent the further harm of individuals. So the incident response team thirdly must have taken steps to compensate victims on the breach, such as offering free credit monitoring and identity theft protection services. So finally, they should ensure there was clear accountability for the security within the organization, with specific individuals or teams responsible for implementing and enforcing security policies. Overall, the focus would have been on responding quickly and efficiently to the breach, minimizing the harm caused to affect individuals, and improving the security posture of the overall organization. So a huge part was to be played by the incident response team. And since we have already discussed about the defensive and offensive strategies, and if they would have followed a proper cybersecurity framework, the breach wouldn't have happened in the first place. And if happened, if they, as discussed earlier, if they had a proper incident response team, the damage that has been done with the sensitive information of consumers would be minimized to a larger extent. And all this was discussed in the previous steps. The same thing, the combination of defensive, offensive, and NIST controls were discussed in the prevention thing, such as implementing a vulnerability management process, having a multi-factor authentication, practicing the proper patching, having a incident response team. All these steps, if they have had in the first place, since they deal with a lot of sensitive data, this breach wouldn't have taken place. Finally, we will also have understand about the lessons learned. So firstly, this breach highlights the importance of proactive security practices, such as scanning the systems, patching high risks. Secondly, it also gives importance to have proper access controls and authentication, process to prevent unauthorized data. So if proper access would have been maintained, even though if they might have exploited the system, uh, the users with the user, they might have exploited it, right? The web application server. If the access is restricted to a minimal level by following the principle of least authorization, even if they had the access to server, they might not, extract huge amounts of data. So the case study of Equifax highlights the need for accountability for security within the organization with specific individuals or teams. So it highlights the accountability as well, and it highlights the importance of transparency and communication in the wake of a security incident. The incident response says also, it highlights, it gives importance to this. So overall, the case study provides a cautionary tale of the potential consequences of pure security practices and highlights the need for organizations to take proactive steps to prevent the breaches and effectively respond to security incidents. Thank you.